Imagine for a second that you woke up this morning, checked your bank account, and realized that half of your money was gone. Just vanished. No hackers, no robbery, no notification from the bank. Just gone. You would be furious. You would call the police. You would demand justice. But here is the terrifying truth. This crime is happening to you right now. As you watch this video, your wealth is being stolen, not by a criminal in a mask, but by the very system you trust to protect it. They call it a policy. We call it the silent tax. In 1913, $1 could buy you a pair of leather shoes, a steak dinner, and a night at a hotel. Today, that same dollar can't even buy you a pack of gum. The math is brutal, and it is undeniable. Since the creation of the Federal Reserve, the United States dollar has lost over 96% of its purchasing power. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't bad luck. It was a feature designed into the system from the very beginning. In the next hour, we are going to peel back the layers of the greatest financial magic trick ever pulled. We will uncover the secret meeting on Jekyll Island that sold America's future. We will expose the mathematical certainty of the collapse. And most importantly, I'm going to show you the only way to opt out before the house of cards comes crashing down. If you care about your future, put your phone away. Watch this until the very end. Because what you don't know is literally costing you everything. Let's start with a lie that you've been told your entire life. The lie is this: real estate always goes up. We look at our parents, our grandparents. They bought a house in 1950 for $10,000. Today, that same house, with leaky pipes and creaky floorboards, sells for $500,000. And we think, wow, that house became so valuable. But did it? Think about it. Is the house 50 times better? Does it have 50 times more rooms? 50 times more utility? No. The house is actually worse. It's older. It's decaying. The house didn't go up in value. The currency you use to measure it went down. This is the money illusion. Imagine if you were building a table, and every year, the government secretly shortened your ruler by 1 inch. Year 1, the table is 3 feet long. Year 10, you measure it again, and suddenly, the ruler says the table is 5 feet long. You celebrate. You think your table has magically grown. You feel richer. But you aren't rich. You just have a broken ruler. This is exactly what is happening to your money. When the price of gas goes up, when the price of eggs doubles, when tuition skyrockets. It's not that these things are becoming more precious. It's that the paper in your wallet is becoming worthless trash. But why? Why does the ruler keep shrinking? To answer that, we have to go back to a cold night in November 1910. If you want to understand why your savings are dying, you have to understand this moment. The night of November 22nd, 1910, Hoboken, New Jersey. A private train car was waiting on the tracks. The shades were drawn. The destination was classified. 7 men boarded that train. These weren't just any men. They represented roughly 25% of the entire world's wealth at the time. There was Nelson Aldrich, a powerful senator. There were bankers representing the empires of J.P. Morgan, the Rockefellers, and the Warburgs. They were told to come alone. No reporters, no staff. They were even instructed to address each other only by their first names, just in case the servants on the train overheard them. Their destination: Jekyll Island, an exclusive private hunting club off the coast of Georgia. For 9 days, these men sat in a room filled with cigar smoke and drafted a plan that would change history forever. They had one goal: to create a central bank for the United States. But they knew the American public hated banks. The people didn't trust Wall Street. So, they couldn't call it a central bank. That was too obvious. They needed a name that sounded governmental, boring, safe. They came up with the Federal Reserve. Here is the first secret they don't teach you in school. The Federal Reserve is not federal. It has no reserves, and it is not a bank. It is a private cartel, granted a monopoly over the creation of money by the Congress. Think about that. A private group of bankers was given the legal right to print the money that the entire country depends on. 3 years later, on December 23, 1913, 2 days before Christmas, when most of the Congress had already gone home for the holidays, the Federal Reserve Act was pushed through and signed into law by President Woodrow Wilson. Years later, Wilson would reportedly write these haunting words: "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. The trap was set. The ruler was about to be broken, and the silent tax was officially born. But back then, there was still one thing standing in their way. One thing that prevented them from printing infinite money and stealing infinite wealth: gold. The dollar was still backed by gold. And gold is honest. You can't print gold. You can't fake gold. So, the bankers asked themselves, how do we kill gold? To understand how they severed the link between money and reality, we have to look at the greatest robbery in American history. And no, I'm not talking about a bank heist. I'm talking about Executive Order 6102. April 5, 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102. It became illegal, a criminal offense punishable by 10 years in prison, for an American citizen to own monetary gold. Imagine the government coming to your door today and demanding you hand over your savings in exchange for paper. That is exactly what happened. They forced citizens to sell their gold to the government for $20.67 an ounce. Once the government had all the gold, do you know what they did? They immediately repriced it to $35 an ounce. Overnight, they stole 40% of the purchasing power from the people. It was the largest wealth transfer in history until 1971. Fast forward to 1944. World War II was ending. The major powers met at Bretton Woods to decide the future of the global economy. The United States, holding 2/3 of the world's gold, dictated the terms. The rule was simple. All currencies would be pegged to the US dollar, and the US dollar would be pegged to gold at 35 Weissler an ounce. The dollar became as good as gold. The world trusted America. They sent us their gold, and we sent them dollars. But politicians have a fatal flaw. They like to spend money they don't have. In the 1960s, to fund the Vietnam War and the Great Society programs, the U.S. started printing more paper dollars than they had gold to back them up. It was a fraudulent check. Other nations, specifically France, smelled the scam. They started asking for their gold back. They showed up with boatloads of paper dollars and said, "We don't want this paper. Give us the metal." The U.S. gold reserves began to bleed out. America was on the verge of bankruptcy. President Nixon had two choices. 1. Stop printing money, cut spending, and induce a massive recession. Or 2. Default on the promise, break the contract, and change the rules of the game. I have directed Secretary Connolly to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the American dollar into gold. Temporarily. That was over 50 years ago. On August 15, 1971, the link between money and reality was severed completely. The dollar became a fiat currency, Latin for "let it be done." It wasn't backed by gold. It wasn't backed by silver. It was backed by nothing but faith and the military power of the United States government. And look at what happened immediately after. The moment the golden handcuffs were removed, the politicians went wild. Look at this chart. Before 1971, productivity and wages grew together. If you worked harder, you got richer. After 1971, productivity kept going up, but wages flatlined. Where did the extra money go? Who stole the fruits of your labor? To find the thief, we need to understand the weapon. We need to understand the mechanism. Most people think the government prints money by turning on a printing press. It's actually much more sophisticated and much more sinister than that. It's called quantitative easing, but let's call it what it really is: legalized counterfeiting. Here is the cycle of theft, simplified into 3 steps. Step 1. The IOU. The politicians want to spend money on wars or welfare, but they don't have any tax revenue left. So, the U.S. Treasury writes an IOU. It's called a Treasury bond. It's basically a piece of paper that says, "Can I borrow $1 billion? I promise to pay you back with interest from future taxation." Step 2. The magic trick. The Treasury sells these bonds to the big banks, but the banks need cash to buy them. So, the Federal Reserve steps in. The Fed goes to a computer, and this is not a joke. They simply type numbers into an account. Click. Zeros are added. Billions of dollars are created out of thin air. The Fed uses this magic money to buy the bonds from the banks. Now, the government has the cash to spend, the Fed has the bonds, and the system is flooded with new money. But wait, it gets worse. Step 3. Fractional reserve banking. When that money hits your local bank, the bank is allowed to lend out 90% of it, while keeping only 10% in reserve. If you deposit $1,000, the bank can lend out $900. That $900 gets deposited in another bank, which lends out $810. Round and round it goes. From your initial $1,000, the banking system creates $10,000 of new credit. This implies a terrifying reality. Money is debt. Every dollar in your pocket exists because someone, somewhere, went into debt to create it. If everyone in the world paid off their debts tomorrow, every single dollar would vanish from existence. The system requires debt to survive. It requires inflation to keep going. If the printing stops, the system collapses. So, they must keep printing. But here is the million-dollar question. When they print trillions of dollars, who gets it first? In the 18th century, a French-Irish economist named Richard Cantillon discovered a secret that explains almost all the inequality we see today. He realized that where the money enters, the economy matters. Think of the economy as a champagne tower. When the Federal Reserve pours new money into the system, they don't sprinkle it evenly over everyone. They don't drop it from helicopters into your backyard. No, they pour it into the top glass. The top glass represents Wall Street, the hedge funds, the big banks, and the mega corporations. They get the money first, and they get it cheap. Near zero interest rates, they use this free money to buy assets. They buy stocks, they buy real estate, they buy up entire neighborhoods. Because they have the money before prices go up, they make a fortune. the price of their assets skyrockets because of the inflation they just caused. By the time the money trickles down to you, the teacher, the engineer, the small business owner, the game is already over. You get the money last. You get the money in the form of a slight wage increase, maybe 3% or 4%. But by the time that money reaches you, the prices of everything else, houses, food, gas, have already risen by 10%, 20%, or 50%. This is the Cantillon Effect. It is a wealth transfer mechanism. It siphons value from the savers and the workers at the bottom and pumps it to the asset holders at the top. It explains why the stock market can be at an all-time high, while the average American is living paycheck to paycheck. It explains why the rich get richer, not because they are smarter, but because they are closer to the printer. This isn't capitalism. Capitalism is profit and loss based on merit. This is techno-feudalism, a rigged game where the lords of finance harvest the labor of the serfs through the invisible tax of inflation. And the worst part, they cover their tracks. They tell you inflation is low. They tell you everything is fine. How do they get away with it? They lie about the numbers. In the next chapter, we are going to look at the CPI, the government's official measure of inflation. I'm going to show you how they manipulated the math, changed the definitions, and cooked the books to hide the fact that real inflation is double what they say it is. If you feel like you are getting poorer, even though a government tells you the economy is strong, it's because they are lying to you. They use a metric called the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, to measure inflation. Think of the CPI as a thermometer. If the room gets too hot, the public gets angry. So, instead of cooling the room down, the government simply broke the thermometer. In 1980, the way we calculated inflation was honest. We simply tracked the price of a fixed basket of goods. But in the 1990s, the government realized that honest inflation numbers were too expensive. Why? Because Social Security payments and pensions are linked to inflation. If inflation is high, the government has to pay out more money to retirees. So, they changed the math. They introduced two tricks, substitution and hedonics. Trick number 1, substitution. The government says, well, if beef gets too expensive, people will switch to chicken. So, let's stop tracking beef and track chicken instead. If chicken gets expensive, they assume you'll switch to dog food. By swapping out expensive items for cheaper ones in the basket, they can claim prices aren't rising, even though your standard of living is crashing. Trick number 2, hedonics. This means adjusting for quality. They argue that because a new car has better airbags than a car from 1990, the price increase doesn't count as inflation. They mathematically discount the price. But try telling the cashier at the grocery store that your dollar is hedonically adjusted. They won't care. You still have to pay the full price. If we calculate inflation today using the same honest methods we used in 1980, inflation isn't 3% or 4%. It is consistently around 10% to 12% every single year. This explains why you can't afford a house. This explains why 2 incomes today can barely support a family, when 1 income was enough 50 years ago. But if you think this is just an American problem, think again. History shows us exactly where this road ends. It can't happen here. That is what the citizens of the Weimar Republic thought in 1921. Germany was one of the most educated, industrial, and advanced nations on earth. But crushed by war debts, they did the only thing they could do. They printed money. At first, it felt good. The stock market soared, business was booming. But then, reality caught up. In 1922, a loaf of bread cost 160 marks. By late 1923, that same loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. People would rush to the store immediately after getting paid because prices would double by dinner time. Society collapsed. The middle class was wiped out. And out of that chaos and desperation, a dark populist leader rose to power, promising to restore order. We all know how that ended. Rome, the greatest empire in history. They didn't have paper money, but they had coin clipping. The emperors needed more money for wars and lavish parties, so they melted down the silver coins and mixed them with copper. They inflated the currency supply to pretend they were rich. The result? The collapse of trade, the fall of the empire, the Dark Ages, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Hungary, Lebanon, Argentina, Turkey. The names change, the dates change, but the story is always the same. No fiat currency has ever survived in the long run. The average lifespan of a paper currency is just 27 years. The US dollar has been off the gold standard for over 50 years. We are living on borrowed time. We are mathematically past the point of no return. The debt is too high to ever be paid back. The only option is to print until the dollar dies. The tragedy of this system is not just economic, it is psychological. It destroys the soul of a society. We were raised with a simple moral code. Work hard, save your money, be responsible. In a sound money system, saving is a virtue. It represents delayed gratification. You sacrifice today to build a better tomorrow. But in a fiat system, savers are losers because the money is losing value faster than the interest rate the bank pays you. Saving money is mathematically guaranteed to make you poorer. This forces everyone, doctors, teachers, plumbers, to become speculators. You can't just work and save anymore. You are forced to gamble in the stock market, or buy real estate you can't afford, or trade crypto, just to preserve what you have earned. This creates a society of high time preference. Nobody thinks about the long term because the future is uncertain. Everyone wants to get rich quick because holding money is like holding a melting ice cube. It creates anxiety. It creates a rat race that never ends because the finish line keeps moving further away. The silent tax steals more than just your money. It steals your time. It steals your peace of mind. And ultimately, it steals your freedom. So, the house is burning down, the exits are blocked, and the firemen are the ones pouring gasoline on the flames. Is there a way out? Is there a lifeboat that can protect you from the coming flood? The answer is yes, but it requires you to do the exact opposite of what the experts tell you to do. In the final chapter, I'm going to hand you the blueprint, the escape plan. Now you know the truth. The game is rigged, the dice are loaded, and the house always wins. But you don't have to play their game. You can choose to play a different game. The only way to win a rigged game is to opt out. How do you opt out of the fiat currency system while still living in the modern world? The answer is simple, but it requires a complete rewiring of your brain. Stop storing your life energy in paper. You must move your wealth into hard assets. What is a hard asset? It is something that cannot be printed by a politician. It is something that requires work and energy to create. It is scarce by the laws of physics or mathematics. not by the laws of men. There are 3 main lifeboats. Lifeboat number 1, gold and silver. Narrator: God's money, nature's money. For 5,000 years, empires have risen and fallen. Currencies have gone to zero, but gold has never, not once, gone to zero. An ounce of gold in Roman times bought you a fine toga and a pair of sandals. Today, an ounce of gold, about 2,400, buys you a fine suit and a pair of shoes. It preserves purchasing power across millennia. It is your insurance policy against total chaos. It's not about making money. It's about not losing everything. Lifeboat number 2, real estate and cash-flowing businesses. Narrator: land. They aren't making any more of it. When you own a rental property, you don't own dollars. You own a structure and the land underneath it. If the dollar collapses and a loaf of bread costs $100, guess what? Your rent just went up to match it. And here is the secret weapon of the rich: debt. In an inflationary environment, fixed-rate debt is an asset. If you borrow $500,000 to buy a house today and inflation runs at 10% for 10 years, the dollars you pay back later are worth less than the dollars you borrowed today. You are effectively shorting the dollar. The inflation that destroys the saver actually pays off the debt of the borrower. Lifeboat number 3, Bitcoin, digital scarcity. For the digital age, we have a new contender. Some call it rat poison. Others call it digital gold. But ignore the noise and look at the math. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. Period. No government can print more. No CEO can dilute shares. It is the first time in human history that we have a monetary asset with absolute, verifiable scarcity. Whether you love it or hate it, it is the only asset in the world that is completely outside the control of the banking system. It is a checking account that no one can freeze, and a savings account that no one can inflate. Gold protects you from chaos. Real estate gives you utility and cash flow. Bitcoin gives you asymmetrical upside and freedom. Diversify. Protect yourself. Don't be the person holding a bag of paper when the music stops. Be the person holding the assets that the world needs. The silent tax is real. It is happening right now. Every second you hesitate, your labor is being stolen. The system is not designed for you to win. It is designed to keep you on the hamster wheel, running faster and faster just to stay in the same place. They want you to be a consumer. They want you to be dependent. They want you to be oblivious. But now you have the knowledge. And knowledge is the only thing they can't tax. You can choose to be a victim, or you can choose to be a victor. You can choose to let inflation eat your future, or you can use it to build your empire. The collapse of a currency is a tragedy for the masses, but an opportunity for the prepared. History is being written. Which side of it will you be on? Don't just save your money. Save your freedom. Wake up. If this video opened your eyes, share it with someone you care about, because they deserve to know the truth too. And subscribe for more investigations into the stories they don't want you to hear.